Alright boys, last time we did a no rolling challenge, it was in Dark Souls 3, and honestly it wasn't super difficult due to me having a shield to make up for my lack of rolling, but this time we're going to be doing it in Bloodborne, and as you all know, there are no shields in Bloodborne. Well, except for this one, but yeah. It's also a much more fast-paced game than Dark Souls 3, which requires you to dodge a lot more often than you would in Dark Souls, and that could potentially make this a much harder challenge, and spoiler alert, it was. And for once, since you guys have been asking so much, I'm finally gonna do the DLC in one of these challenges, and oh boy, that DLC, let me tell you, it was rough. And in the beginning, I was totally gonna make a joke about how I definitely kicked the wolf's ass with no rolling and no weapons, but I actually did end up kicking the wolf's ass with no rolling and weapons by giving him this quick little rectal exam. And then I was able to kill every single enemy on the way to the first lamp, which something 2015 Ty would be very proud of, considering I played like the first hour of this game without any weapons because I had no idea where you were supposed to get it. But we make our way to the Hunter's Dream, pick our weapon of choice, being the axe, and if you're wondering why I picked the axe, well that's because who needs to roll when you've shattered your enemy's ribs into a million pieces? And something really interesting that I've never noticed before is in Bloodborne, you actually cannot sprint while you're locked onto an enemy, unlike in Dark Souls 3, so that's gonna definitely make it a lot harder, and I probably won't be locking onto most bosses during this run. Every goddamn time, bro, I swear. But with my spin to win move, I was pretty easily able to take out this first little group of enemies, and I also took out Nick Avocado the same way. And honestly, these damn dogs are probably the worst enemies so far because they're so much faster than everybody else and they like to jump at you and you can't jump away, so that makes it a lot harder to fight them. And then I died to the stupid ogre who's clearly been practicing with a shake weight a little bit too much. But then we come back, get our revenge, talk to the crow lady to get our bold hunter marks, step into the boss arena to get our insight, and immediately dip so we can go level up now. So we level up, grab some Molotovs, and we head back to the boss fight, and I don't know how, but some way I was actually able to beat him my first try. I didn't even really plan on using these Molotovs on this attempt because I figured I would have to learn his moves and I would die pretty quick the first time, but once I got his health about halfway down, I just started lobbing those bitches at his head. And like I said before, since I can't sprint while I'm locked on, I decided to do most of this fight not locked on, and I think that makes it a lot easier for this kind of run. But all I really did in this fight was I would just try to stay slightly out of his range, so once he attacked me, I would run in, get a hit in or two, and the Cleric Beast actually gets staggered pretty freaking easy, so you can definitely take advantage of that. The one move that I really hated during this fight was his jumping attack because I was way too terrified to actually look up to see where he was, so I would just try to sprint away as fast as I could, but I got hit every single time. But eventually we do make it to the end of the fight, and I Kobe my last Molotov at him, and I stunned him just long enough to run up on him and finish him off. After that, we can head on to the sewers, take out some of these guys, take out some rats, get quickscoped by some camping douchebag off this ladder and somehow survive, talk to this little girl to get her music box, and then I absolutely yeet myself off this cliff and somehow survive. And then we could finally make it to Daddy Gascoigne. And after probably 20-25 deaths, I probably came up with the biggest puss boy strategy known to man to beat him. I get myself 10 Molotovs and use every single one of them in the first phase while I run around like a scared bitch, and it's extremely annoying when he jumps over or rolls through one of your Molotovs, or you just straight up miss, but you don't need all of them, so it's okay if you do sometimes. And in the first phase, if you do get hit, it's not an immediate death sentence most of the time, but it does take forever for your character to get back up since you can't roll out of being knocked down, except in the second phase, because if he catches you in his Teen Wolf phase, just put your name in the death note because it's over for you. But after I run out of Molotovs, I whip out the music box, play him some Chip Skylark, and apparently he does not like that, probably because he's a dirty mouth bitch, but usually he'll transform after that, and that's when you play the song again, try to get another backstab on him, fail, and then just start swinging wildly. But it still wasn't quite enough to finish him off, so I just lead him over to the by these stairs and finish him off over there. And after that, it's time to head for the Blood-Starved Beast, but I die to these stupid dogs multiple times on the way there, talk to this very sane gentleman who I'm sure will not go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs later in the game, and then we head to Old Yarmin where this man tells me to turn back, but I don't listen, and then he starts shooting at me like a dick.
Hello, I'm Johnny Knoxville, welcome to Jackass!
But soon after that, we make it to the Blood-Starved Beast, and he's honestly not too bad, probably the easiest fight so far. It's pretty easy just to get behind him, do a visceral attack, get the backstab, and pretty much the strategy I used for the entire fight. His moves never really get all that complicated. The only thing you have to really worry about is near the end of the fight when he starts leaking smegma everywhere, and you just have to watch your poison status to make sure you don't run out of health, and bring some antidotes just in case, and you'll be fine. And after that, we start heading towards the next boss, but first we have to get the best item in the game. Fucking mint. Then they want us to pay 10k to open up this door, but nah, we take the scenic route instead, get shot by some camper, then fight this firebending wolf, and then this lady tells me I smell like a queer. And then I send this big fella to the Shadow Realm just by thinking about it. And then I just straight up run through this next section because I'd probably rather eat Nick Avocado's ass than fight a bunch of dogs and snipers while I can't roll or dodge. But eventually we do make it to the Witches of Hemwick, and yeah, this is the easiest boss fight in the game, no matter what run you're doing, but I did actually die to this stupid move, but other than that, it's pretty straightforward and easy fight. I pretty much just run around around, smacking away, hopefully trying to find the other one so I can drain both of their health at the same time to make the fight a little bit easier. And then I did actually almost die to one of the enemies they spawn, because if they do hit you, they kind of stun lock you and you can't roll away, but luckily I survived and was able to finish him off pretty soon after that. And after that, we head back, grab our numbing mist for Amelia, and to prepare for this fight, since it was literally one of the hardest fights in my fist only run, I had my numbing mist, my fire paper, my Molotovs, and my flame sprayer ready to go just in case. And I needed almost none of those things, because thanks to this game's limb system where you can damage each individual limb for some of the bosses and stun them pretty easily, this fight was extremely easy. Honestly, the gameplay during this fight is pretty trash because it was my first attempt, so don't judge me too harshly, but pretty much all I did was just run around her body, smacking each individual arm and leg, keep staggering her, just smack her up and just run away, and just repeat that until she was dead. And yeah, like I said, most of the boss fights with big beasts in this game I won't be locking on, and it was the same for her, because it would make it way harder to lock on in this fight, because I'd be much slower and I'd pretty much not be able to avoid any attacks. But yeah, that's all she wrote. And it might seem like this run is going super easy so far, but trust me, it gets way harder later, especially the DLC. But after that, we head into the Forbidden Woods, immediately get set on fire and die, and then we head back for our revenge, and this time I'm gonna stand back, throw my Molotovs at him so I don't die. God damn it. After that, we go through the cave so we can get to Yosefka's clinic, and I grab the Cainhurst summon so I can go there, not to fight the boss quite yet, but I wanted to get some blood chunks while I'm here so I can upgrade my weapon before the next boss fight, because the next one is a lot harder. After that, we head back to the Forbidden Woods, and I kill so many snakes that you would think I was some sort of like snake killer or in a snake killing contest. I don't know, never mind. But then right before the next boss fight, I got to give this pig a nice little rectal exam just like the wolf, because how could I possibly resist that? But eventually we make it to the Shadows of Yarmin, and this has got to be one of my least favorite boss fights in the game, because I am just so bad at taking on multiple enemies at once, especially when I can't roll. But what I did at the beginning of the fight was put on some fire paper, immediately run in there and immediately do a heavy spinning attack so I can do a little bit of damage to all three of them at once, and then I start running around scared like I live at Weenie Hut Jr. or something, hoping to make them dizzy enough that I actually run in there and get a hit in or two. I also found it pretty useful to hide behind this grave every once in a while and get a heavy spinning attack ready for the swordsman when he gets close, and if you get lucky, sometimes you can hit the swordsman and the flamethrower guy, and after that I would also run around trying to hit the range guy every once in a while, but not too many times because you don't want to get put in the second phase too early. But I also like to kill the range guy first, because in the second phase he's probably the hardest for me to avoid, especially when I can't dash, because he shoots these fireballs that explode when they hit the ground near you, and if you can't dash, it's kind of hard to avoid that. But once I'm in the second phase, it's pretty similar to the first, where I'm just running around circles just hoping for an opening, but the strategy where I hide behind the grave doesn't really work in the second phase, because now the swordsman has a move that goes straight through the grave. I also like to kill the swordsman second, because one, he's hard to deal with in the second phase, and two, he runs up on you a lot more often than the other guy, so it just makes sense to take him out first. And also for the flamethrower guy in the second phase, it's really easy just to kind of get him in a loop where you hit him once or twice, he'll dash away, just walk up to him, hit him again, he'll dash away, and just repeat that until he's dead, and you can avoid the giant snake phase altogether doing that. And immediately after that, about 5 feet away, we can head into the Rom fight, and yeah, this is probably one of the easier fights, because for one, I finally started to remember to use my beast pellets, and I also use some fire paper, and that makes his health drain super quick. The hardest part about this fight is the spiders surrounding him, and you do kind of need some good RNG if you're going to ignore them and just go straight for Rom, which is pretty much what I did, because I knew I could kind of just steamroll through it eventually after a few tries, and yeah, that's pretty much what I did. I would only take out spiders if I absolutely had to, if they were right in my face or actively attacking me or something, but even then I would like to just run away, heal myself, and then run back in on Rom. Another kind of difficult part of this fight is in the third phase, because he starts doing a lot more magic attacks, and if you're being greedy like I was, just running in there without thinking about it, you could definitely get caught by that and get taken out pretty quickly. But like I said, you'll get lucky enough eventually and you'll just steamroll through the entire thing. Oh man, this lady got spaghetti sauce all over her nice dress. What a shame. Now we could head into the Unseen Village, grab the Cathedral Key for later, and then we could head straight for the Dark Beast farm. And yeah, the Dark Beast is another boss that suffers from taking limb damage and getting staggered way too easily. Sometimes you could literally just stagger him over and over again as soon as he gets up and just put him right back on the floor again. It was also a good idea for me to use the extended version of my axe for this fight, because it could be kind of hard to hit his skinny little legs sometimes if you have a short weapon, but other than that, this fight was pretty easy. And we also get the Spark badge after beating this boss, which lets us buy electric paper, which is pretty useful, honestly. I did try taking out those 3 hunters that all fight you at the same time, and I almost got one of them, but then I got one shot at the last second by the electric attack, and I just gave up after that. But after that, we hustle on over to the One Reborn boss fight, and the most annoying part of this fight, honestly, is just when you die having to take out all these people on the edge over and over again, because I did die a few times, and I just hate having to run around the entire arena killing all these people. I probably would have beat this boss on my second attempt, but I got killed by the acid floor attack, and I couldn't even see it. It was literally invisible while I was draining my health, and I had no idea what was going on for a second. But in the actual fight I won, it was actually really easy. easy. I would just run in there, start smacking whatever I could smack, and eventually you'll stagger him, and then you just start hitting his little skeleton head for a lot more damage. But once he gets back up, I just run away and then run back in there, just keep smacking away until eventually he'll start dropping bodies on you, and that's probably the only attack that I really had to avoid a lot, but just rinse and repeat all that, and the fight will be over before you know it. Next, we gotta run through the lecture building, and then this guy tried to stand in my way, but unfortunately for him, I am an unstoppable force, but then this guy splashed me with his cum, and I didn't know how to feel about that. And then I died like a million times trying to run through this area, and according to the IGN guide, your shield will actually help stop the buildup of frenzy. They're fucking lying. But soon after that, we make it to the Michael Ash fight, and yeah, he's super easy. All you have to do is just wait till he does his tentacle attack, and then slightly strafe to the right, and then just hit him over and over again, and then the fight is over. But before we get to the Moist Nurse fight, we have some optional bosses we gotta take care of real quick, so I head back to the Nightmare Frontier, slowly run through this swamp, dodging rocks, making an extremely calculated drop down here where I end with 1 HP, exactly like I knew I would. And then I was just getting all sorts of fucked up trying to make it to the elevator, but eventually we do make it. And the amygdala fight, or amygdala, I don't know, however you say it, it was actually kind of difficult because you gotta try to make her face get down to the ground so you can stagger her, but it's really hard to keep your distance and sometimes hard to make her do the moves that you want her to do. And the time I actually beat her, I was playing so bad and I was kind of hoping I would die so I can get a better looking kill on her, but of course I actually did beat her that time, but I wish I could show you one of my better attempts, so I'm sorry for the bad gameplay. But pretty much the entire fight, I was just trying to bait out one of her slam attacks so I can run in and just smack her head and stagger her and do a lot of damage to her, but after a while doing that, once you get into a later phase, you can kind of just stand under it and just stand near the tail, and then it'll do a jump attack every time, and if you're standing at the tail, you won't get hit. But I did kind of forget the part where you're supposed to turn around and walk forward so you could hit it in its head as soon as it lands, but I was still able to get through the fight. It just takes a lot longer this way when you're attacking its feet the whole time. But after a whole lot of struggling with that boss, I finally decided I needed to go fully upgrade my weapon, but to do that, first we need to get a Blood Rock. And to get a Blood Rock, we have to head down here, run past all the best enemies in the game, and I know at least one of you have never seen this area before, so you want to know what happens? You want to know what happens when I pull this lever? You want to see what comes out? But after that, we can go upgrade our weapon fully, head back to the Cathedral Ward so we can get to the next boss, but first we have to go through one of my least favorite parts of the game, and it's my least favorite because you have to kill one of these brain suckers to get through, and these guys suck, no pun intended, but you have to kill at least one of them to get the key so you can move on to the next boss, and you have no idea which one has the key, and of course I had to kill every single one of them to get the key. And I hate them so much because they have multiple moves that'll trap you in place and steal your insight, and you can never get it back no matter what. But eventually we get past it and we can head to the Celestial Emissaries now. And this fight isn't too terrible. It's probably one of the easier boss fights in the game, and having my axe doing a spinning attack really helps a lot. This is probably exactly what I would do if I was fighting a bunch of 5th graders. But once you find the right one, just run over to him, keep doing your spinning attack so nobody else will touch you, and then you get to the second phase where he grows really, really big. And in the second phase, I did something pretty similar to what I did in my fist only run of the game. That's just where I run up here and just run back and forth while all the small guys follow me, and then I'll run back down, hit the big guy a couple times, and then run away, and rinse and repeat that until the fight's over. If you're feeling a little froggy, you could take out some of the smaller guys on your way so they don't bother you while you try to fight the big guy, but other than that, it's a pretty easy boss fight. But immediately after that, we can break this glass and head to the Daughter of the Cosmos, which is probably the fight I had the least amount of experience in this game, so that did make me a little bit worried about this. And it was actually going pretty good at first. I saw she had a pretty big opening when she does her headbutt slam attack, so you can just run in front of her and just hit her in the head and do a bunch of damage until she pulls an Osiris on me and just rams me out of nowhere, taking 90% of my health. And then she one-shots me with that headbutt, and then she one-shots me with that ram attack, and then she one-shots me with a single swipe. But after about 20 or 25 deaths, I finally came up with a strategy that allowed me to win the fight. And in the first phase, I got pretty good at it. I was basically just running around in front of her, trying to bait out that head slam attack or her charge attack. And if it's the head slam attack, I'll just turn around, get 2 or 3 hits on her, and then run away. And if it's the charge attack, I'll try to run to the side a little bit, and then as soon as she stops, I'll turn around and just start smacking her tentacles up and then run away again. And eventually she'll start spitting out blood or whatever it is, but anyway, it gives you frenzy, so you'll definitely need to avoid that, but it is pretty easy to avoid. And eventually you'll hit her head enough to stagger her, and then you can just start wailing on her until she gets back up. And then eventually at another point in the fight, when she's going into her last phase, she'll just lower her head down just for you, so you can do a ton of damage while you're waiting for her to turn into her final form. And her final phase is where I was dying a lot, because I figured I would need to keep my distance because a lot of her moves are a little bit more dangerous now, but honestly, doing the same strategy in the first phase is what won me the fight. Because if you stand right in front of her, she'll almost never do her like ultimate slam attack where she'll fly into the air and then try to slam down on you, because that is pretty hard to avoid while you can't roll. So if you just stay in front of her, she'll just keep doing the same moves moves that she's been doing since the beginning. But yeah, this was definitely one of the hardest fights so far. 0 out of 10, would not recommend. But after that, we have one more optional boss fight before the Moist Nurse, being Ligarius, and this is another one of the hardest boss fights in the game for me. But after many deaths, I did discover how to get past the first phase pretty easily. If you just run up on him, hit him, he'll usually do the skull attack right in front of himself, and he takes a second for it to explode. But if you just run away from that and then run towards him and hit him again, he'll just keep doing that over and over again. And you can kind of get in a pretty good rhythm of you running up, hitting him once or twice, him doing a skull attack, and you just kind of running forward and then hitting him and then just doing it again and again. It's pretty difficult to keep him doing that the entire first phase, because eventually you'll probably get too close to the edge or too close to a little building or something like that, and that'll stop him from doing it. But it's honestly a really easy way to get him pretty close to the second phase. And while he is going into a second phase, it's pretty beneficial because you can get a few hits on him and a backstab. But after he gets into a second phase, it gets really annoying because he just loves putting that sword down and just have flying swords flying at you all the time. And if you get really bad RNG like I did, he literally put his sword down 3 times before he finally put it away, and you can eventually run out of bullets because that's the easiest way to get his sword out of the picture, because running up on him while he's doing it will just make you take damage. But while you're in the second phase, he has a couple of moves that are somewhat easy to avoid. He likes jumping in the air and trying to slam on you, and if you just walk forward and to the left a little bit and turn around, most of the time he'll miss you and you'll be ready to start attacking him. And also, if you get lucky while he's attacking you with his sword, you can actually get a parry on him pretty easily and do a lot of damage to him that way as well. But yeah, this was definitely another one of the hardest boss fights so far, but it was all worth it in the end because I got his crown.
Who's laughing now? I got my hat.
And now it's time to take on the Moist Nurse, and on the way I desperately tried to get my hand in this pig's ass, but alas, it was not meant to be. And she was actually not nearly as hard as I thought she was going to be. It only took me about 3 or 4 tries, I think, and all I really had to do was just wait for her to do an attack, run in there, get a hit or two, and then run away. And the best thing to do during this fight is when she's doing her crazy combo attack where she just non-stop slicing, if you can get to her back, which is a little bit harder to do if you can't roll or dash it, but if you can get to her back, you can just do a ton of damage, and most of the time she can't even touch you. The scariest part of this fight is when you go into the nightmare phase, and I can't really do anything except just run circles hoping to not get hit, and I actually did hold up my shield during this part just in case I did get hit, but I never did in the 2 times she brought me there, except at the very end of the second time. But yeah, other than that, it is a pretty easy fight. As long as you don't get caught by her blades or get too greedy, you'll pretty much have no problem with this fight at all. But now the time for fucking around with easy bosses is over, because now we have to head into the DLC. And since I've been using the same weapon this entire run, I decided I would get a new weapon, and I figured I might as well just get one in the DLC. And after looking over my options, I decided it would probably be best to use a strength weapon since that's what I've been upgrading most of the time, and I ended up deciding on the amygdala arm. For no other reason other than that, I just thought it looked cool. But honestly, by the time I finished the run, I realized it was kind of a mistake to get that weapon. Not because it's bad or anything, it's actually pretty good against most regular enemies, but against the bosses, it's pretty slow, and especially against the DLC bosses, you're gonna want a faster weapon. Especially since I already had a slow, heavy weapon with the axe, it probably would have been a way better idea to get a fast weapon, but oh well, what can you do? It's over now. But just to get the weapon, I had to run all the way across the map, all the way through these gunners, through this cave, just to get the weapon without rolling a single time, and that was honestly kind of tough. But after I got it, I decided to test it on some of these hunters and regular enemies, and yeah, like I said, against regular enemies and stuff, it's pretty good, but against the bosses, it's just way too slow. But it was all pointless in the end, because by the time I got to the first boss, I ended up switching back to my axe after a few tries with that weapon, because like I said, it's just way too slow, and the axe felt a lot better to use during this fight. And this fight, oh my god, it was way harder than any boss we have fought so far, by a lot. He just has a ton of health, he has a bunch of different moves you need to learn, and he just does a ton of damage to you if you do get hit. And what makes this fight really hard is it's basically 2 boss fights in one, because once you get halfway, he completely switches his weapon and his fighting style, so you basically have to get through one boss just to get an attempt at the second version. And I'm not kidding when I say it took me hours just to get past the first phase. But what I learned during this fight that made it a lot easier is once I learned that if you just stick to his back right legs, it makes it a lot harder for him to hit you, because most of his moves do not hit that zone. So basically after every single one of his attacks, I would immediately run for his back right legs and just start smacking away, and then run away when I could. After you do some amount of damage, eventually he'll start doing the spitting attack where he'll spit some cum or something at you, I don't know. But once he does that, I literally just say fuck it and decide to tank it and just run through it and just start hitting him and get my health back anyway. One attack that you really need to avoid, that's probably the hardest to avoid without being able to dash, is his dash attack, because it does a ton of damage. It would basically leave me with 1 HP every single time I got hit by it. and it was taking me so long to learn how to do his first phase. I wanted to give up doing the DLC so freaking bad, but I was like, maybe this is the key to finally getting a viral video, but probably not, because this video is going to get like 1,000 views. But anyway, once we get to the second phase, it is also hard as fuck. But the best thing I tried to do is just try to stick behind him the whole time, hitting his back legs, even though it's still really hard to do that because he loves to spin around and then smack you anyway. But if you keep up your hit and run strategy, you can kind of avoid a lot of his attacks, even though I was still getting fucked up, but I was still hitting him a lot back so I can get my health back anyway. I honestly never developed a foolproof strategy for the second phase. I literally felt like I just got really lucky the time I finally beat him. But when I wasn't hitting him from behind, I would like to wait until he does his double slash attack where he sends like energy waves at you, dodge both of those, and then try to run behind him and get some hits in. And if you get really lucky, he'll do this charge attack. He has actually 2 different charge attacks, both of them you could take advantage of and just start hitting him a bunch, but that is a blessing, a huge blessing, because without that, I never would have got through this fight. But yeah, this was definitely harder than any boss fight I've done so far in the main game, and I cannot believe I still have 4 more bosses left in the DLC. This is what your mom sounds like when I do the sex to her. But after that, we have to take out these 2 lovely ladies, and it's actually pretty easy, especially with the amygdala arm. You just absolutely clobber their shit, just smash them into bits, and same for the other lady, you just Hulk smash her into the ground. She can do nothing against you. But before we go any farther, we need to grab this skull and then head all the way back to the beginning of the DLC for the next boss fight. And thank God this fight was slightly easier, I guess. I mean, it was much slower paced, I'll say that, and that does make a difference. But that doesn't mean it was easy, because it still took me over 30 tries, and it's still one of the hardest bosses in the entire game. The biggest problem with this boss is he has an absolute ton of health. I think he has more health than pretty much any other boss fight in the game, at least that I've noticed. So just getting past the first phase to get to the next one takes absolutely forever. But what I did find out, if you want to get past it a lot faster, if you're willing to tank a hit or two, just run in there when he does his side swipe and then just start beating the shit out of him, because you will get hit 99% of the time, but you'll get most of your health back every single time, and it'll make the fight go a lot faster. By the gameplay you're watching, you probably think it looks easy because he's barely even hitting me and I'm just absolutely beating the shit out of him, but it took me forever to get this strategy down, like literally another few hours just doing this fight alone. But if you can get this strategy down, it also makes the fight go a lot faster, because before I would just try to bait out a few different attacks and it literally would take 5 to 10 minutes just to get to the second phase doing that. But if you can get behind him and kind of get him in a loop of just hitting him, hopefully he'll do a slam attack or some kind of swipe and miss, and you just keep beating the shit out of his ass and just get through it that way. And once I got to the second phase, there was pretty much only 1 or 2 different moves that I would be able to take advantage of, and one of them was when he starts to spit lava at you, because as soon as you see him bend down and start seizing a little bit, just run at him and start beating the shit out of his sides. And what got me killed a lot of times during this last phase was when I would rush in, try to hit him when he was spitting lava, I would try to run away immediately after that, but honestly the best thing to do is just stay right next to him, next to his side, because if he starts doing his crawling slamming attack, you're fucked. But yeah, that's pretty much what I did for the entire last phase. There's honestly not too much to say about it, because it's kind of boring. You just gotta wait for that single move for him to do, because everything else I was way too scared to mess with him with. The hardest thing to avoid, like I said, is that crawling slamming attack. Even when you're not right next to him, it could be pretty scary because he can corner you pretty easily during this fight, and that got me killed a lot also. But eventually, with enough luck and persistence, we were eventually finally able to make it through this very, very, very tough boss fight. But now 3 more bosses in the DLC and 2 more in the main game. Why did I do this? But after that, we just run through the rest of the level, smash some of these goofy goobers, and then we make it to the next boss pretty quickly after that. And thank God, no joke, this was actually a pretty easy fight. I would just run in there, use my spinning axe attack to try to keep my distance from them, and then just run away every time I would get a hit or two. The hardest part of this fight for me was avoiding getting hit after I hit them, because they do a pretty good amount of damage to you if you do get hit, but usually you can just run away and then heal, and then just rinse and repeat that tactic until the next phase. Also, some of their magic attacks were somewhat hard to avoid if you were getting surrounded, but it's pretty easy just to stand behind this thing and avoid the magic attacks altogether. And also in their second phase, it's kind of a blessing in disguise when they do their ultimate magic attack where they start shooting things at you from the sky, because it's really easy to avoid that just by standing behind that middle thing again, and also usually you can just kill some of them while you're waiting for it to end. And even though I did end up using like all of my blood vials for this fight, it was definitely the easiest boss fight of the DLC so far, and even easier than a lot of the bosses in the main game. And luckily the next boss fight was immediately through the door, literally in the same boss arena that you were just in, so we don't have to go too far to get to her. And do you smell that? Do you smell something? It smells like cheese. Like like a cheese in here or something. Maybe that's because I was actually able to cheese this next boss fight. Not that it made it super easy or anything. It definitely took me a handful of tries to get through it, but it definitely made it way easier than it would if I just fought her regular. All I really did during this entire fight between all of her phases was just walk towards her all big dick like, and as soon as you see her twitch a muscle, just shoot her, and then 6 times out of 10 you'll probably get the parry on her. If not, just take the hit, run away, lick your wounds, and then try again. And like I said, it did make this fight a lot easier, but it definitely did not make it an easy fight because you still need to learn all of her moves, and you still need to get kind of lucky because if you're not good at parrying, you could definitely get messed up pretty quickly and have to start all over again. And even though it still took me a handful of tries, this boss was way less frustrating than all the other boss fights so far because I knew I would just take a little bit of persistence and a little bit of luck to be able to get through it. But yeah, even though I was getting my ass beat a lot during this fight, like I said, just run away, heal, and then try again, and eventually you'll get through it. But after that, we could head into the last area in the DLC, and this is where it really begins because this is where some of the hardest enemies in the game are at. But we start smashing some of the regular enemies. They don't really stand a chance against the amygdala arm, but then we run into this motherfucker. And this guy could easily be a boss on his own if they just gave him a name and a health bar at the bottom of the screen, but luckily they didn't, so I can just avoid him after he killed me a few times and just move on with my day. But after we run away from pretty much every single enemy and just bum rush it to the boss, we finally make it to the last boss in the DLC, the Orphan of Kos, or Cosm as some say. And yeah. But after about 50,000 deaths, I started smelling something again. It was the same thing I started smelling in the last area. It smells like cheese in here. But thank God for the speedrun community because I would have never figured this out on my own. And I know what you're watching right now, and trust me, this was way, way harder than it looks. After about 2 or 3 hours of dying to him the regular way, I finally started to try this strategy, and trust me, it is not as easy as it looks. It still took me another 2 to 3 hours just to get this strategy down. It was so hard for me to get this down that for once, I was literally watching back my own footage to see where I went wrong every time and see how I could actually do it right, because it was tough. Because if you're literally like 2 frames off of doing this parry, he will hit you and you will cry. But eventually, after a few hours of struggling, I was finally able to get him stuck in this parry loop. And there are actually multiple moves you could parry during this fight to get it started, but the best thing I found to do was wait till he's about to do his double spinning attack, and then right as he's about to do it, hit him. And if you miss, if you're even 1 frame off, he will let that shit rip. But once you got him staggered, just run up to him, hit him 2 times. It has to be twice. It cannot be once or it won't work. Hit him twice, back up, wait till right when his weapon is right at his shoulder about to hit you, and then shoot him again. And after you stagger him again, just keep repeating that over and over and over until the fight is over. And like I said, it is a lot harder than it actually looks because the parry timing for this attack is very, very precise. You could even see there was a couple of times that I was slightly off when he hit me, but luckily you're able to get up fast enough to hit him a couple times and to keep him in the loop. But it is way better to be slightly late in your parry than slightly early, because if you're slightly early, he will actually whiff it and he'll hit the ground right next to you, and then he'll just start beating the absolute shit out of you. But finally, after hours and hours and hours of struggling with this DLC, I was finally able to say I finished the Bloodborne DLC without rolling a single time. But we're not quite done yet because we still got 2 bosses left in the main game. So we pop back into the main game, have a little afternoon snacky snack, and then we face Yarmin. And Yarmin was so much easier compared to the DLC I just went through. Now, he wasn't an easy fight or anything, but it was nothing compared to the DLC. At the beginning of the fight, whenever he has his scythe out, it's actually pretty easy to parry him, especially the move where he's right about to do his spinning attack, as he'll have a really big charge up, and as soon as you see him twitch a muscle, just shoot him, run up on him, and get the stab on him. And whenever you're at a slight distance from him and he's trying to hit you with a scythe, usually you could just shoot him pretty much at any point in his combo, and you'll almost always get the parry. But once he pulls his gun out, it gets a little bit more tricky, but it's still not too hard. Basically, I would just run towards him, full sprint at him every time, and then he'll try to shoot me or hit me, and that's when I'll turn around and start whacking him up. It works pretty well most of the time, but even if you do get caught, during his combo, if you can manage to shoot him during it, you'll almost parry him every single time. And eventually during the middle of the fight, he'll start going all Super Saiyan Blue at you, and as soon as he starts doing that, you can just run up to him and get a bunch of free damage. And the only real difference in this stage that I noticed that was different was he'll do this jumping attack where he shoots some wind at you every once in a while, and I was honestly too stupid to be able to avoid that because I forgot that you need to run away instead of trying to run under him for some reason. But even then, it was still pretty easy just to run away and heal up before he reaches you to finish you off. But other than that, you pretty much fight him exactly the same way you've been fighting him this whole time, and then eventually he'll go even more Super Saiyan Blue, and I don't really know what changes at this point because I just kept fighting him the exact same way, and eventually you will beat him. So yeah, it was a pretty easy last fight, honestly. Not too much to say about it. Or not a last fight, because we have one more boss fight technically that we have to take care of, and that would be the Moon Presence. And she tries to give you a good old smooch to finish you off in a cutscene, but I guess I smell like a Smash player at a tournament, so she backs off pretty quickly after that. And in my opinion, this is even easier than the Yarmin fight, other than the times that she'll get you stun locked in a corner or something and she just refuses to stop attacking. But other than that, it's a pretty easy fight. Most of the time it'll try to do a combo at you or jump at you or something, and if you hit it, it'll actually just back away instead of attacking you, and that makes it way easier. And speaking of the jumping attack, that's definitely the easiest attack to take advantage of because she almost never actually makes it to you. She will almost always land short, even if you're not even trying to avoid it. But eventually you get to the second phase, and the second phase of the fight is even easier than the first. And that's because of her like super scary, spooky ultimate attack where she'll drain your health all the way down to 1 HP, but it's super easy to see it coming, and you can just run up on her and just start beating the absolute shit out of her and get the majority of your health back every single time. Yeah, so there's really not much to say about this fight other than she does have deceptively long range that could get you caught every once in a while, but other than that, it's super easy. But boom, that's it. We did it, boys. That is all she wrote, and this was definitely harder than the Dark Souls 3 no rolling run. 0 out of 10, would not recommend. And if you're wondering what I think the hardest boss fight in this challenge was, I would definitely say it was Ludwig. That fight took me a million tries just to get past the first phase, and then it took me a million more just to get past the second phase. Like I said, that's one of the only boss fights that really felt like I had to fight 2 bosses in one because the styles were so completely different between each phase, and that just made it so much more difficult just having to get past one just to get to the other. But thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it all the way to the end. I really appreciate you. I appreciate you guys enjoying these videos. Give this video a like and subscribe maybe if you think I deserve it, but other than that, have a good day, guys. Peace.